All right, back to Kodiak Island. Let's take you back to the first day we spent on the island. It was a busy and eventful day, and as you may know, the days in Alaska in the summer are very long. Around 18 hours of daylight, which means you can get a lot of exploration and photography in that amount of time. And if you watch the 3 weeks in Kodiak video, you'll know that we're scouting for puffins and Kodiak bears. But at this point of the trip, we were just looking for anything cool to photograph. And you also know that the weather, well, it wasn't being the most cooperative. So, of course, on this weather day, it went from full downpour to light rain to partially cloudy, which meant for the most part, it was gray skies and wet. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just means you get diffused light and no shadows in your subject, and you get something different out of your subject due to the rain. And I'll have a video out very soon on that specific topic. But a bit of sun and yellow good light on what we were photographing would have been very welcome. We started out the day and headed south on the Chiniak Highway. Kodiak bear scouting was on the agenda for the first half of our trip, but we had a spot we really wanted to swing by first. When we got off the ferry the day before and we were looking around for a bit, Dawn spotted something we had to go check out. A group of stellar sea lions. These guys hang out on a floating dock in the St. Herman Harbor in Kodiak Island. These guys are cool and huge, with males reaching 11 feet in length and weighed over a ton at 2,500 pounds. We didn't see any of that size, but still it's fun to watch and get a few images of them tussling around on the docks and in the water. And as a bonus, as we're walking back to the parking lot on the docks, we spotted this. A pigeon guillemot swimming in the dock slips in the reflection of a red fishing vessel. So cool to get those reflection shots. We packed up and started to head out of the marina, and we were almost out of the slips when we spotted a kingfisher flying to perch along the harbor. So we had to jump out of the truck real quick and grab a couple of shots. And during our trip, we found that Kodiak is a haven for these kingfishers, and we found them just almost everywhere on the island during our 3 weeks there. We headed out to our first hopeful spot to find some bears along the Buskin River. Unfortunately, there weren't any bears or bear signs, but we did run into a pair of Sitka black-tailed deer on the beach. It was an incredible sight to see the doe and the buck along the beach with the ocean in the background. The buck was just starting to grow a set of antlers. We watched them for a bit until they headed back up the river and into the tall grass and out of sight. We checked a few more spots along the Buskin River for bear signs, but still no luck. From here, we headed to our next spot to check on bears and other wildlife at Women's Bay. I gotta capture this because you don't see it again forever. Not much presented itself except for a couple small birds. A couple Savannah sparrows that land on top of the pushki, or more commonly called cow parsnip, and we also had a few common redpolls swing by to say hi. Before this, I only had seen these guys in the winter time. We finally made our way out of Women's Bay and made our way down to Middle Bay as getting close to low tide. Why? Well, this. Starfish. We found this stretch of beach last year and it was covered with starfish and other sea creatures at low tide. This year we found the starfish, but not as many as the year before, and I'm sure this is due to the lower temperatures on the island that I talked about in the last video. These little guys come in so many colors and sizes, so much fun. Even found a leg of a Sitka deer caught in the rocks. Well, more bones than legs. We could have spent forever walking around looking around the rocks and all the little tide pools, but we needed to move on and do some more recon. We kept heading south until we hit the T in the road and headed left down Chiniak Road to the head of Casson Bay. Here's where we ran into another one of Kodiak Island's residents: cattle. The cattle in this area are free range, and you'll find them along the road in the T a lot. Along with some horses also that are free ranging. And this one bull had a neat set of horns that were almost growing back into his head. I just had to grab some shots of him in the rain. And a little bit after this point is we linked up with John and Lydia. And as soon as we got out and started looking around, we got the familiar cry of a dowitcher. There were several flying around and landing on the tops of the spruce trees. Funky looking little bird. We could also hear yellowlegs and sandpipers calling in the distance. We could see them flit from here to there out on the flats. We nabbed a few shots and tried walking along the flats, but the ground was just too soft and we didn't feel getting our waders out just yet. John suggested a spot a little further down the road with better ground than the creeks that flowed into the bay. And as soon as we got parked and started walking, we had some new chaperones following us around, more savanna sparrows. They would land on the rocks, the tall grass, and on the lupine, which is really cool. We grabbed a few shots on our way towards the creek arms, and then I heard it. Plovers, semi-palmated plovers. My head was on a swivel trying to determine where these calls were coming from and any glimpse of these amazing little birds. And I finally caught a glimpse of some fast movement close to one of the creek arms. It was just a flash, but it's all I needed to know that I may have found them. Heard another peep behind me along the creek arm and saw a little flash of movement. So I knew I was right in between the birds. So I decided to get prone and see if any came closer to me. And after a few minutes or so, I saw them running in front of me and behind me, and they kept getting closer. And there were even more across the creek from where I was laying. The cool thing with a lot of shorebirds is if you can get prone and stay fairly still, they'll ignore you for the most part. And after a bit, they'll get closer to you. For the most part, the plovers will walk towards me or move past me. Plovers are a special treat for me. Needless to say, I was grinning from ear to ear. Mixed in with the plovers were sandpipers also, least and western sandpipers. Don had a field day with these sandpipers. They seemed to really like him as they kept flying really close to him. After a bit, we started catching glimpses of smaller birds amongst the plovers, and we finally realized when one got close enough that they were plover chicks. Some were just fuzzballs, but others started getting the telltale semi-palmated plover markings. Just amazing. We finally decided we better move along and see what else we could find. As we were trying to remind ourselves we were scouting on this excursion, and it was already a fruitful run even without finding any bears or puffins. John and Lydia had a spot that they knew held Arctic terns and Aleutian terns this time of year, so we headed to this area and started working the trails. We could hear some terns farther away that seen about in the bay, but nowhere near us. This area was along the American River that starts to feed into the bay and was a complete field of lupine. These are one of the prettiest flowers in there in full bloom. It's just a sea of purple. We did find a lot of small sparrows and finches were amongst this area, and we couldn't have asked for a better environment for them to be in. And then we spotted a sparrow sitting at the top of the moss-colored stump. So cool. It just sat there and watched us from a distance. At this point, John and Lydia had to head out for the day, and it was just Don and myself for the remainder of the day. We continued to explore the area when we eventually found a pine grosbeak male sitting atop of a spruce tree that had red pine cones starting to form on it, and it had the mountains in the background behind it. It was a great set of elements to frame that grosbeak in. And then I got lucky. I looked to my left and I caught this scene. A savanna sparrow to land on the top of the lupine, and the mountains were flanked perfectly behind the bird, and this piece of lupine he was sitting on was just a bit taller than the rest of the lupine in the field. Just perfect framing. And even luckier, it stayed there for more than just a few seconds. It stayed long enough for me to grab the shot I had when I initially saw it, and then move around a bit more to frame the shot better and to play with the exposure. This has to be one of my favorite shots from the trip, and one I've been hoping to happen for a long time, to catch a small bird on top of the lupine or top of a flower. I really thought I had the shot and the experience of the day. Between the plovers earlier in the day, the pine grosbeak, and the savanna sparrow on that lupine, until we came around a bend in the trail and could see over this rolling hill and down to the next one. It was a bald eagle sitting on a lone stump in a massive field of lupine with a misty mountain right behind it. We both bailed out of the truck as quick as we can and as quietly as we could, so afraid that we were going to spook that eagle and he was going to bail on us, but luck was on our side. He glanced our way, and I guess he decided we weren't just too much of a menace and just continued to do his eagle thing and hang out. We both grabbed our first shot where we stood. I call these just-in-case shots, and once we saw he's going to stay on the perch, we slowly started moving to frame our shots, trying to line up the flowers in the foreground and the mountains in the background. You cannot begin to guess how excited we were with what we were seeing. After a bit, a few seagulls came by and harassed the eagle for a bit. And then shortly after that, I guess Mr. or Mrs. Eagle, whichever it was, decided it was time to leave, and it did just that. After this, we decided to continue down the Kodiak Road. We saw lots of sea ducks in the bays, harlequin ducks, scoters, mergansers, guillemots, merlets, and a lot of others. So far, this road had been very fruitful and gave us some good ideas where to spend the rest of our time over the next few weeks. At the end of the road, we ran across another pine grosbeak eating some dandelion seeds along the road. It was such a cool bird. From here, we backtracked along the Kodiak Road to the T and kept going straight this time down the Pagashak Road. We didn't see much along the drive along Pagashak Road except for a few kingfishers hanging out on the power lines along the river, nothing really nice to take a picture of. And then it began to rain on us and the fog moved in pretty heavy. We couldn't really see much farther than just the side of the road. And we got near Surfers Beach and Fossils Beach toward the end of that Pagashak Highway. It was completely fogged on that side. So the west side of the island was pretty foggy right then. But the side road northeast of this area, we could see a break in the clouds, so we decided to explore this direction. We found some swallows working the end of Barry's Lagoon, but let me show you how I summed up that encounter. Okay, tree swallows are hard. These little dudes were just spinning way too tight in a circle to track even with the naked eye, let alone with the camera, and they had no pattern to their flight. So we finally gave up trying to photograph these guys, and we head a little farther down the road. And we finally hit the end of the trail. We got another great encounter. There's a group of horses grazing in a sea of lupine, which of course we couldn't pass up this encounter. So we hopped out and started shooting. Just a lot of fun to line up these horses with the lupine. And as luck would have it, as we just started to photograph the horses, the fog and rain started moving on top of us. So we decided this would be a pretty good end of the day. The weather had moved in on top of us, and it was about an hour drive back to Kodiak, and we were really ready for some hot food because all we'd had some cold sandwiches for the day. So we headed back north to Kodiak, both with a content smile on our face and with a great day with unique captures all the way around. We didn't see a bear puffing, but we found much more than we thought we would, especially in just one day. And our motto from that experience resonated for the next 3 weeks. If you don't go, you won't know. Which really meant to get out and look and don't be stuck on what you don't find, but rather what you might find. Hey, if you liked this video and you found it entertaining, hit that subscribe button and leave us a comment. We love reading and replying to your comments. And if you want to help us monetarily do these adventures and produce more of these videos, think about becoming a member of the channel. And keep your eye out for more adventures of our Kodiak Island trip. Small birds, a random crossfox experience, and puffins. Yes, we finally did get some puffins. And as luck would have it, I'm flying out to Kodiak Island this week, and I'm actually heading over to Katmai National Park in Geographic Harbor to catch some more bears like I did last year in the same spot. So, guys, until next time, just like always, get outside and go run that shutter.